Hi, it's the Silly Moustache here. I make a lot of videos about acoustic guitars and about playing them. Sometimes I sing a song with them. I have quite a lot of acoustic guitars. Perhaps you could say it was an obsession. But I'm not the only one, you know. And in 2019, I think it was, I discovered that there was someone that had written a book, and it was called The Devil Is In It, and the subtitle is A Story of Love, Obsession and the American Acoustic Guitar. Well, I had to buy it, and I read it, and I enjoyed every single very large, beautifully put together page. And I would just like to read the preface. This book is a love story about the steel string flat top acoustic guitar, one that started when I was a teenager, one that endures as strongly as ever to this day, but as with many love stories, it inevitably describes a journey into obsession. Waiting for the delivery of 2 new handcrafted guitars at the time my 14th and 15th, I knew I had contracted an extreme and unreasonable enthusiasm for guitar acquisition. Before I inevitably acquired more, I needed to understand why and how this had happened. How had the 18th century European or Spanish guitar been transformed by the 20th century into the modern American steel string acoustic that had such a hold over me? In search of an answer, I read extensively around the topic, books about guitars, their history, papers by academics, interviews with guitar players, makers, collectors and dealers. As I dug deeper and ever wider, a friend implored me to leave the books, the telephone and the internet behind and pack a bag. He suggested that I follow the guitar's own journey from Europe to America to better appreciate its strange energy to induce obsession and often addiction amongst guitarists and guitar builders alike. My journey and the people I met helped me explore the history behind the defining instrument of the 20th century. As I travelled from New York to Pennsylvania, through the Carolinas to Tennessee and Mississippi, and then from the Mexican border up through Northern California, I learnt how so much of the music culture we have today came from the poorest sections of the black and white communities of America. By the end, I understood how much of that music was inspired and facilitated by the steel string flat-topped acoustic guitar, and most importantly, how the guitar had become the people's instrument. That was signed by John Stubbings for me, and it was dated London 2019. I read it from page to page and I loved every sentence. It was great fun. It has just been re-released, I believe, and one can buy it in, I think, paperback or something like that. However, earlier this year, and this is September 2025, I discovered that he brought out or published a second book. This is called The Guitar Detective, a non-fiction novel. And with your permission and interest, I'm going to read the author's note here. During the 5 years spent researching and writing my first book, The Devil Is In It, I met and interviewed many fascinating characters, uncovered numerous stories about long-forgotten guitarists. I heard countless tales of lost guitars, not just the ones that got away, but also the many that were too good to be true. Whilst many of these stories made their way into The Devil Is In It, I didn't want to lose those that didn't get into it, and I held them on file, hoping to be able to use them at some point. Over the last few years, I continued to carry out further research, interviewed more guitar players, historians and collectors, and undertook more digging, not only in England but in the USA and also France. As a result, I started writing what you are now reading, a companion book to The Devil Is In It. The Guitar Detective is about a guitar enthusiast John, who bought an old acoustic with an unproven provenance from a music shop in the London suburbs. He had admired the guitar hung up high on the shop wall as an ornament for years, and it's only as the shop was closing down as the octogenarian owner retires that the guitar was put up for sale. When the guitar was acquired, it came with a story that it once belonged to a long-forgotten American blues player, but it was thought that might be just another tall story. It is soon discovered, however, that the story might well be true. The Guitar Detective was finally nearing completion at the beginning of 2024 when I had a brain hemorrhage which robbed me of much of my vision. As I started to recover, I discovered that the bleed on my brain had also affected my ability to read and write, and I'm therefore indebted to my son Jeremy for his patience and collaborating with me on the final edit and publication of this book. I can see how much I've read, about 20% so far, and I find it absolutely fascinating and compelling. Further, that little shop in the London suburbs was Potter's and Hill Rise in Richmond, a place that I spent many happy times in my teens and early 20s, and that particular shop that John mentions was where I bought my second and third guitar, with the help and assistance of Jerry, the gentleman that ran the shop, who was very, very kind to me, and I'm sure many others. I believe there was a chap called Eric Clapp that used to go there as well, who changed his second name later. You might have heard of him. But I commend these books to obsessionist guitar, steel string, flat top guitar fans, collectors, acquirers, whatever. And I think it's great fun. I don't know John Stubbings. I wish I did. I would love to meet him and talk with him and share stories. And so I'm not being funded or anything like that in making this video, just because I think it's a great book, or two great books to be fair, and it deserves reading. If you have been, thanks for watching.